I, Ronald Reagan, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
And will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
May I congratulate you, sir.
Some 30 minutes ago, the planes bearing our prisoners left Iranian airspace and are now free of Iran.
And maybe it's that one word that best describes the feeling of this moment. The word is freedom. The hostages are free. Hello once again, and welcome to this week's EUCOM Report. I'm Specialist Mark Van Treuren. This week reporting from the United States Air Force Hospital Wiesbaden, where 52 former hostages and now freed Americans are completing their fourth day of decompression. This has been a most historic week in the European Command, a week that began with this announcement from President Ronald Reagan.
Some 30 minutes ago, the planes bearing our prisoners left Iranian airspace and are now free of Iran. So we can all drink to this one. To all of us together, doing what we all know we can do to make this country what it should be, what it can be, what it always has been.
They are hostages no more. The 52 freed Americans landed shortly before 7 o'clock this morning at Rhein-Main Air Base after a 12-hour journey from captivity. Several thousand people were on hand to greet the returnees at their first stop on American-controlled land. Flying from Algeria to Germany aboard U.S. Air Force C-9 Nightingale medical transports, the 52 were met by former Secretary of State Cyrus Vance. Vance headed the State Department 14 and a half months ago. That's when the American embassy in Tehran was stormed by the militants. Both those who had been captives and those who came to welcome them to freedom were joyous at the reunion. The returnees appeared to be in relatively good health as they debarked, many waving to the crowd, most of them wearing broad smiles in the hour just before dawn at Rhein-Main. Touchdown, it was all aboard 2 buses for the short Autobahn ride to the Air Force Hospital at Wiesbaden to be a home away from home for at least the next few days for those 52 Americans. At Rhein-Main Air Base, Lee Hilliard, AFN News.
One of the banners hanging outside the Wiesbaden Air Force Hospital here says, "Welcome to the Freedom Hotel." And for the 52 now world-famous guests, that's just what this is going to be, a Freedom Hotel. And maybe it's that one word that best describes the feeling of this moment. The word is freedom. The hostages are free. The bus ride from Rhein-Main took about 45 minutes. Then shortly before 8 this morning, the police escorts entered the hospital grounds, closely followed by the 2 Air Force buses carrying 52 free Americans. The buses pulled up alongside the hospital, the doors opened, and one by one, all 52 paraded out to the cheers of hospital staff, their families, and also many patients. The returnees all seemed to take in the joyous moment with smiles, peace signs, and waves to the crowd. All seemed well, although tired and anxious to get in from the early morning Wiesbaden cold. Once inside, they had the opportunity to have breakfast, call their families, or just go to bed. The choice was theirs. and that in itself great news, as it was probably the first time in over 14 months that 52 Americans had the choice of what they wanted to do. The hostages had been in Wiesbaden 14 hours when their first official visitor came to call. The man who had done the most and suffered the most to attain their freedom came to pay his respects. He hoped to come as President of the United States, but now Jimmy Carter came as a private citizen, a special envoy of President Ronald Reagan.
Was greeted by West German Chancellor Helmut Schmidt and then departed for Wiesbaden, accompanied by several members of his administration who had played major roles in accomplishing the release of the 52. Those included Vice President Walter Mondale, former cabinet secretaries Edmund Muskie of State and William Miller of the Treasury, and Carter's fellow Georgians Hamilton Jordan and Jody Powell. At the Wiesbaden hospital, Carter spent about an hour and 15 minutes with the returned Americans, a meeting of those who once were captive and the man who had struggled for the past 14 and a half months to free them from that captivity. One Carter aide called portions of the meeting emotional to the point of awkwardness. Returning to Rhine-Main, the former president revealed what many have suspected, but no one, at least officially, had voiced.
Americans in Iran were mistreated much worse than has been previously revealed. The acts of barbarism which were perpetrated on our people by Iran can never be condoned. Iran, in my judgment, and the people responsible in Iran for this criminal act ought to be condemned by all law-loving, decent people of the world.
It was clear after Jimmy Carter's reference to mistreatment that today's press briefing would concentrate on that issue. State Department spokesman Jack Cannon reached the podium, and the first details became public.
Though it was clear from our repeated public statements during the time, we had a broad outline previously of the deprivation of human rights. The evidence is now mounting from discussions that we are having that shows a much worse and much more extensive mistreatment than we had previously evidence of. It is still too soon to quantify this mistreatment or go into details of individual episodes, since we are still in the process of discovering exactly what happened to all of the 52. But at this point, I can tell you that we have serious mistreatment in the following areas: poor food, scarce food, and living in very primitive and cold conditions. A number of persons were kept in prison from one time or another during their captivity. The prisoners were kept blindfolded during movements during the time in their place of captivity. Several prisoners were persistently fed misinformation concerning their families, much of it distressing. Most of them were denied mail or any form of communication from the outside world for extended periods. A number of them were kept handcuffed for long periods of time. There were cases of beatings, cases of mock executions, cases of solitary confinement for extended periods, and some in primitive prisons. Some were threatened with loaded pistols at various times.
The main actors in the drama that has taken place in EUCOM this week are now, of course, safe and sound in this hospital. But a story like this literally has thousands upon thousands of supporting actors. Much support has come from the United States Air Forces Europe, as we learn in this report.
General attitude within my section is we're all willing to stay till they get back. I've pulled 2 12-hour shifts myself, willing to stay any longer than necessary.
What is your job?
Aircraft maintenance, maintaining a C-9.
Well, we have come so close so many times that one really has to be careful about one's words. But this time, I truly do think that the momentum is there, and watching them getting the C-9 Nightingale hospital jets ready now, I think it's fairly clear that they're now waiting for the for the hostages to clear Iranian airspace to send off the C-9s to Algeria. So I think that's the clearest sign we've had that this could be the end of everybody's ordeal, but particularly the hostages.
Excuse me, sir, could I have your name?
Yeah, Dennis Guyett.
You're commander of AVIS, Audiovisual Service. You guys have to put in a lot of hours when something like this happens, with a lot of documentation and photography. How do you feel about the hostages coming home?
Super. I think it's great. We don't mind putting in hours for something like that.
Whose idea was this sign?
Well, it kind of generated itself amongst a bunch of people in the outfit. We all worked on it.
Have an indication for the first time of where the hostages will be going definitely.
Escuta, meu querido. O negócio é o seguinte, pode ser que os reféns sejam libertados dentro de minutos.
How's it going?
They're pretty well behaved. They all want to get in, get their photos, so they're running about. We're just going to keep them in hand.
We've had a heck of a lot of help from EUCOM, from the Army, USAFE, Max Resources, and it's gone very well indeed.
Joe Glover from WJBK TV in Detroit. And I understand that you folks don't have this kind of crowds of reporters here every day, but they've passed out press releases, they've been polite, they've told us where to go when they could. We've had a great deal of difficulty, of course, sorting out the facts, the details, the logistics of this whole thing.
To go late yesterday afternoon, cruising the airplane in the air. I met the folks down at Algiers and brought them back this morning. Basically, it was a piece of cake mission for us from that standpoint. Our folks felt that the people were really, really happy to be home, and that was quite evident by watching them get off the airplane. And we're just happy to have them back.
Americans watching this occasion. How do you feel?
Very, very happy. Happy for the men that just got their freedom today.
I had heard that you might be viewing this occasion from a different perspective than the others here.
Yes, I was somewhat of a hostage myself. I was a prisoner of war in Vietnam for 6 years.
And why would you turn out for this particular occasion?
I just wanted to see the looks on their faces and get the perspective from the other side.
And for the perspective of the 52, some of the freed Americans have begun to make their feelings known.
We really thank the German people for their graciousness, and we really love them. They really were great.
What types of things have you been doing here?
Getting checked from head to toe. Briefings, and people have been super, just absolutely wonderful.
Barry, months ago when you were examined by the doctors, that was featured a lot on American television and in the papers. How are you feeling now?
Much, much better. It's amazing what stress can do to an individual under conditions that were just very difficult to bear up with sometimes.
What's been the feeling when you got on the plane, when you came over and you came near the hospital? What were you guys doing in the plane?
Exhilaration, total exhilaration. And we knew we were home. Even though it's Germany, this is considered home.
I'm told that when you were walking through the Tehran airport, there were no smiles, you were being harassed there. When did it turn around for you? When did you realize
that we got on the Algerian craft?
The Algerians were wonderful. They really worked they put their full effort into everything.
And the moment we crossed the Iranian airspace and crossed that border, the entire aircraft shook with joy.
You heard the comments of former President Carter last night talking about, in vague terms, the tough times you had, the bad treatment you had. Is there anything that you can give us in the line of specifics?
Well, I think it's an individual person's story, but...
And we hope that in time, when everything settles down, we can get the full story out. We're most anxious to do that, but for now, we want to keep a low profile.
I have my own feelings about the Iranians. I spent years studying Iranian affairs, and I love Iranians. It's hard to say that I did, but some of the treatment. Personally, I just feel that Iran is an outlaw country, and it does deserve tremendous criticism from the world at the treatment of American diplomats, and the whole entire diplomatic community should stand behind us for for what they had done to us. I personally feel that the agreement should be looked at, but that'll take time. And again, each hostage has their individual story. Mine, I think, was much less worse than many others. A lot of hostages went through really difficult times.
Barry, was there a time that you thought you would never get out, that you thought you'd been forgotten?
Well, that's going to depend on the department's reaction.
I knew that we weren't forgotten.
But I plan to stay on.
As the first month rolled by and the second month rolled by,
it's my life.
It was totally incomprehensible. I said, "What's going on? Why aren't we out?" But
we weren't really certain until
lack of information, mostly. Thank you very much.
For the stars of this show, the days in Wiesbaden have been to go through a period of decompression and to begin relating their experiences to doctors and a State Department debriefing team. Yesterday, Dr. Jerome Korshak met the media and made public some of the team's observations.
The medical program for the 52 returned Americans is still in process and will not be completed here at the Air Force Hospital in Wiesbaden. On the basis of our present knowledge, all of them are ambulatory and will be able to return together to the United States. Evaluation and treatment will continue in the U.S. As might be expected, the 52 individuals are in varying states of mental and physical health. We have found a number of physical ailments, most of which existed before their captivity. A number of those released are exhibiting signs and symptoms of transient psychiatric illness, including post-traumatic stress syndrome, which are directly related to their captivity in Iran.
State Department spokesman Jack Kennan.
Our present plans are to fly our 52 returnees from Iran back to the United States on Sunday.
So here in Wiesbaden, freedom, day 5, is in its dwindling hours. We now wait for the final word from the doctors so 52 free Americans can go home to the United States and their families, bringing an end to one of the most historic moments in the history of the European Command. Reporting from Wiesbaden, I'm Specialist Mark Van Treuren, AFN.
I'd like to thank God we're home. I'd like to say that the Algerians are very brave to go into Iran, period.
Yeah, it's just good to get out of Khomeini land.
It's great to get away from the masses.
It's good to get out of Khomeini land.
The one thing I'd like to say right now to everybody back home is you can never imagine how much the letters and your prayers and your support through all of this have meant to us. We weren't able to write to you or communicate with you, but only the Lord knows how much it helped. And thank you from the bottom of my heart.
It's really great to be out of that place, man. I feel wonderful now. A little tired, a little exhausted, but all right.
The people outside were very friendly, and it was very warm, and I was very happy. It was great to be back.
Good evening, and welcome to another AFN Special Edition. I'm Lee Hilliard, and with us is Dr. Bob Larson, who is the U.S. Forces Liaison Officer for Germany's southern state of Baden-Württemberg. Our subject is Germany. We'll be asking your questions about the customs, traditions, and lifestyle of the German people. The answers will be coming from Dr. Larson, who first came to the Federal Republic some 3 decades ago. In that time, Bob, that you've been here, what major changes have you seen in Germany? What's completely different now, if anything, from when you first came?